The midpoint formula is a common formula found on the ACT, and this is what the midpoint formula says. It says that if you have a segment with endpoints xy and another endpoint xy in a coordinate plane, the midpoint is given by this formula. You're going to take the two x's, add them up, and divide by 2. Then you're going to take the two y coordinates, add them up, and divide by 2. Since it is a midpoint, then obviously you're going to have an ordered pair here. Now, this should seem logical because if you want the middle of something, doesn't it make sense to add the two things up and divide it in half, or to divide it by 2? There are two ways the ACT likes to ask this question. One way is they ask you for the midpoint. The other type is where they give you the midpoint and they're asking you to find another endpoint. Look at number 17. It says, what is the midpoint? So this is one where they're asking for the actual midpoint. So what we're going to do, we said we're going to take the two x coordinates and we're going to add those up. So that would be -6 plus 2, add them up and take half. And then we're going to take the two y coordinates and we're going to add them up and take half. So that would be 9 plus 5 and divide by 2. So if I take -6 plus 2 and get -4, -4 divided by 2 is going to be -2. Well, that tells me my answer is already B, and I don't even need to go any further. The next one. It tells us in the standard coordinate plane, R is located at 1, 0, S is at 1, 2, and T is at 4, 0. It forms a right triangle. Then it says, what's the midpoint of ST? So we are asked to find this midpoint right here. So let's label our picture, and that's always a great thing to do on the ACT. S is at 1, 2. T is at 4, 0. And then let's just find the midpoint. We know that the midpoint formula tells us to take the two x coordinates, add those up and take half, and then take the two y coordinates and add those up and take half. So those yellow x's, 1 plus 4 is going to be 5 divided by 2, and that gives me 5 halves. Once again, I know that has to be my answer, so there's no need to finish it out. But if I did, I would get the answer. Let's look at the next one. Here's the way they ask it in a word type problem. A section of the highway is represented by a line segment with endpoints 30, 50, and 90, 100 in the standard coordinate plane. Exactly halfway, so there's that middle part, along the highway section is a road sign. What are the coordinates of that road sign? So I want the middle. So take your two x's, let's add those up, 30 plus 90, and divide that in half. Then I'm going to take the two y's, 50 plus 100, and I'll divide that by 2. So this is 120 divided by 2, which is going to be 60. So I'm going to have to work this one out the rest of the way. 50 plus 100 is 150 divided by 2, which is 75. And my answer is H. Okay, here's another way that they can ask for the midpoint, this time involving a circle. The diameter of a circle has endpoints -4, 12, and 8, -2. The question says, what is the center of the circle? The center being the middle. So let's take the two x's and add those up. So -4 plus 8, divide that by 2. And then we'll take the two y's and add those up and divide by 2. Negative 4 plus 8 is 4 over 2, which is 2. So my answer is A, and I don't need to waste any time finding the other. All right, here's another way that they'll do this too. Don't let this one intimidate you. It says in the complex plane, consider the segments whose endpoints are negative 6 plus 3i and 2 minus 7i. The midpoint, so again, they're asking for the midpoint, corresponds to which set of numbers. It looks a little bit different, but it's still a midpoint question. Still take those two parts and add those up and divide by 2, and take your two imaginary parts, making sure you keep that face with that body on that negative 7, and divide by 2. So negative 6 plus 2 divided by 2, which is going to be negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. So therefore, I know it's H or J. Then let's take the next part, the green, the 3i plus, and again, keep that face with that body, negative 7i over 2. So 3 plus negative 7 is negative 4i divided by 2, and you get negative 2i, which makes us have answer H. All right, now we're going to switch gears in this next problem. In this next problem, if you notice, it tells us the point 2, 1 is the midpoint. So this time they are giving us the midpoint and not asking us for the midpoint. To me, the easiest way to do this is to visually draw it out. It tells me that the midpoint, which I'll call M, is 2, 1. Then it tells me that one of the other endpoints is 6, 8. And the question says, okay, what's the other point? Well, if this is in the middle, then it means it's equal distant from one side to the next. So from 6 to 2, what did I have to do? To get from 6 to 2, I had to subtract 4. Well, if it's in the middle and it's the same on both sides, then to get from here to here, I'm also going to have to subtract 4. So 2 minus 4 is negative 2. So I know my answer is F or G. Now the next one. To get from 8 to 1, I had to subtract 7. So obviously, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side if it's exactly in the middle. So 1 take away 7 is going to give me negative 6. And so my answer is G. Okay, let's look at this next one. Same thing is happening here. It says the midpoint is 3, 5. So once again, they are giving me the midpoint and not asking me to find the midpoint. Let's draw a picture like last time. The midpoint is 3, 5. The other coordinate that they give me is 1, 2. It doesn't matter if you put the 1, 2 over here and do the math, or if you put the 1, 2 over here and do the math. I think it's easier to go forward rather than go backward, so I always put mine over here. So to get from 1 to 3, I can see that I'm adding 2. So then obviously I need to add 2 to get to the other side. 3 plus 2 is 5, which means my answer is H or J. Then the next one, from 2 to 5, I add 3. So I need to add 3 again. And 5 plus 3 is 8, making my answer be J. All right, this one right here. And if you'd like to, pause the video and try it yourself and then come back and check to see how you did. All right, again, the point 3, negative 7 is the midpoint. So they are giving me the midpoint and not just asking me to find it by simply adding and dividing by 2. I'm going to draw that picture, and I hope you did too. The midpoint is 3, negative 7. The other point, one of the other points, is 9, negative 11. And then I want this one here. All right, let's see what we did. To get from here to here, I subtracted 6. So then to get from here to here, I need to subtract 6. And 3 minus 6 is negative 3. Then for the next one, negative 11 to negative 7. Be careful on this one with these negatives. Negative 11 to 7 means I had to add 4. So therefore, I'm going to add 4 again, and negative 7 plus 4 is going to give me negative 3. So my answer is B. Okay, almost done. Again, pause the video if you'd like and try this one on your own. They're telling me the midpoint is at 2, 1. So that midpoint is at 2, 1. Another point is at 8, 10. And we want to know what's on the other side. What's the other endpoint over there? So from 8 to 2, subtracted 6. So subtract 6 over there. And 2, take away 6 is negative 4. And so notice it said, what is the x coordinate? So all they asked for was the x, so I didn't have to go any more with that. So the x coordinate is negative 4. For this last problem, I want to show you another way that they potentially might ask midpoint. Instead of using a coordinate plane with ordered pairs, they're just using a line segment here. So here's what the question says. It says S is on RT. We can clearly see that. The length of RS is 6. Again, they've told us that. And ST is 20. Now here comes the question. The question says, what is the distance? So what is the distance between T and the midpoint of RS? Well, the midpoint of RS would be right in the middle. If this whole thing is 6, then that much is 3. So therefore, the distance from the middle to T is going to be 3 plus 20, and 23 is my answer. If you'd like more help and practice with ACT math prep content, be sure to check out the other videos on my channel. See you later.